Hello, this is Watch All About with another watch review, and in this review we're looking at a watch by the brand Verk, who are based in Sweden, and they specialise in minimalist style and themed watches. Something about the Scandinavians who love to do that style of watches, and to be fair, they usually are the nicest designed as well. So as you can see, our case is pretty sleek. If we open it up, we have our certificate of authenticity, nice little instruction manual as well, and then we have the watch itself. So if we just open this up, and I can just get it off this little clip. There we go. So pretty nice and stylish packaging, so that's always a plus. Looking at the site, looking at the watch itself, it certainly is very simple and minimal in every aspect, really. So if you like this kind of watch, I find people either find them really boring, or people really like the simplicity behind them. Personally, I'm not crazily fussed about minimal watches. I prefer, a little bit more design to my products, but you can certainly appreciate the amount of thought and design. Some people say simple design is the most complicated type of design. So there we go. That's a very thought-provoking point, isn't it? So this is the Verk ETT 01. So ETT, that's E-T-T, and that's the Swedish word for the number 1. And let's talk about the specs. So we have a reasonable diameter of 40 mil. So I've got a 7¼ inch wrist. There you go. So we have a 40 mil diameter. We have a very thin height of 7.9 mil, and then a lug-to-lug length of 47 mil. And to go with this size, we have a weight of 93 grams. So it really is a very easy watch to wear. Extremely lightweight, 93 grams, despite being on a mesh bracelet. And just the really nicely condensed dimensions make it, a really simple and comfortable wear on the wrist, I find. It also slips really nicely and easily under any cuff or like a jumper or any sort of long sleeve that you may have. So that's always a plus as well. Water resistance, we've got 3 atmospheres or 30 meters, so not really a great deal of water resistance there, so I wouldn't recommend you go swimming with it or anything like that. I mean, there's a very mild measure of protection there against accidents, but I would say keep well away from any sort of water. The movement is Swiss-made quartz, which is always a plus. If you're going to have a quartz movement, it's good to keep it Swiss-made, so that's the Ronda 7 series. One of their fairly standard and reliable movements. Quartz, not a lot of things can go wrong with quartz, especially when they're made to the standard of a Swiss-made movement. So that's a good plus. Our lug width is 18 mil. Now this is one of the interesting things that I personally would have preferred 20 mil. I think it just would have balanced out the diameter of the case a little bit more, but there we go. It's an 18 mil lug width, and the mesh strap, the mesh bracelet itself is by a renowned manufacturer called Staib. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. That's Staib. They're German, and I've had a look at how much they are if you were to buy one just on its own, and they're starting at around €100 plus. So it is a very expensive aspect of the watch. Obviously, they wouldn't have spent €100 on the bracelet, but it goes to show the quality of the bracelet itself as its own in its own right, really. 2-year warranty as well, so if anything does go wrong, you're covered for a little bit of time there. So moving on to the price, €249, which roughly equates to about £215. So if we go into in a little bit more detail, then we will be able to see if it is worth your money. So starting off with the dial, as you can see, extremely minimal. And I'm going to be saying this word a lot, minimal, or simple, or other variations of the same kind of feeling. As you can see, really, I mean, our print, it's a flat white base to it, matte finish. And really, we've only got a couple of printed elements. Our tiny logo in the top half. We have a minute track with a slightly longer dashes at each hour, and then our hours printed with a leading 0, which I always like to see because it equals out nicely across every digit, across every hour. And that's it, really. All of the printing is, you know, very, very fine, and it's actually really legible as well, despite being quite small and quite subtle, which is you know, quite a good feat. And then if we look at our hands, really they're just straight points. As you can see there, they're polished as well, so we do get a nice bit of reflection. But you know, what more can you say about the dial apart from that's your lot? So some people will think, oh, I love it, that's you know, that's beautifully simple, whereas some people will think it's a little bit too simple for me. So that's down to personal preference. Whatever the case, you know, build quality is pretty much spotless and flawless, but you know, there's not a lot to the dial to show particularly impressive manufacturing skills, but you know, what it is well made. Moving on to the case then, everything's brushed apart from this nice little polished kind of key line at the base of the bezel. Case back as well, everything's brushed, as you can see. So that little polished ring there splits up the case quite nicely. Everything else, again, really straightforward, really simple. So we have a regular barrel shape with quite slender lugs. The case back is simple but quite nice design with the centre aligned information. It's nice and deeply engraved as well, so that's always good to see rather than just laser etching. Case back also is secured in place by 6 screws around the outside, like so. And then we have our crown, which is sort of like an octagon shape. You can see we have some squared off edges, and if we just pull it out, it's very easy to use despite its small size, so that's good. But you know, it's going to be it's a quartz movement, so you're never going to use it very often at all, but when you do need to, it's nice and easy to use. So the crown is also brushed to match the rest of the case, but you know, it's a nice little interesting design feature with these squared edges. So moving on to the strap then, you know, it's a mesh strap, so it's made by the Stabe company, so apparently it is exquisitely made. I mean, looking at it, it is obviously well made, but I don't think it's much more outstanding than something like what's on one of the Bracelet watches, for instance. You know, one of those watches which are coming in at about 120 quid. So I don't know if the extra the extra money that you're paying for this particular manufacturer of mesh bracelet is really worth it, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be paying for this, which is increasing the price so much to about 250 euros. So I personally would probably have preferred a slightly lesser one without the label of Stabe manufacturer, and paid less money. It's not to say it is a lovely bracelet. I mean, you can see it's very silky. We'll get the macro lens on in a bit as well, and we'll see it in much closer detail. But it is very comfortable to wear. Obviously, very well put together as well. And we have a double locking clasp, which is unsigned. So obviously, it has just come straight from Stabe, because it's unsigned. So the clasp works like that, so you push down first and then we have two locking mechanisms there. So it's 18mm for the entire length. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. So let's get the macro lens on and we'll have a look at it all in much closer detail. Okay. Right. Just give the dial a quick wipe and we'll have a look at this print work first. As you can see, despite it being a little bit on the small side, it is nice and accurate. And then moving on to our hands, we have our very thin polished points. See a nice little tick then. There we go. Moving on to the case. So there's our brush side with our very thin polished line, which is a nice touch. Otherwise it would be extremely simple, so this does break up the case nicely. You can see here decent angles on the lugs as well. Well manufactured despite its simplicity. Moving on to the crown. So there's our little octagon shape. Fully brushed. And then just moving on to the case back. Here's our details engraved in the centre as well. And then we have our screws. Like so. So then moving on to the bracelet. So here's our top. As you can see, everything is very nice and uniform. You can see the join of the links there. And then on the side we have our exposed pin as well, so it is quite easy to take off if you want to. Just a quick look at the end here. Would have been nice to have seen like a cap on the end of this probably. And then our buckle. So that's our like inner clip, and our top flap with brush top. And then here's our other inner top flap. Okay. So, €249 or £250. I will be completely honest, for me personally, I think it's a little bit too much for the amount of what you're getting. And I'm fairly convinced that the majority of that money is going on the Stabe mesh bracelet. So my personal thoughts are, I would have much preferred to have seen it to be slightly cheaper with a non-labelled Stabe bracelet, basically, because I think €249 is just a little bit too much. It does have a sapphire crystal and it does have a Swiss-made movement, but you know we're seeing these things on a watch costing £100 less. So I think it isn't particularly competitively priced. You are getting a very nice package, so that's one thing to give them as well. And obviously the design, if you're into your simple and minimalist design, you can't deny that this is, you know, it's very, very simple, but it's also nicely designed as well. It's not to my personal taste, but I can appreciate how it is that simple, and you know, it does look nice on. I just think the price is just a little bit too high. So there we go. I think if they were to drop the price a tiny bit, then it would be a very nice and interesting proposition for many people. Either way, if you are willing to pay the money, then you will get a very nice manufactured watch. There's no doubt about it. You know, it is well made. It's well put together. It's pretty much flawless, to be honest. But there's not a lot of watch to go wrong, if you know what I mean. So the dial is very, very simple. Case again is very simple, but it has a nice little polished line on it, and then we have our mesh strap from Stabe as well. So those are my thoughts. Yeah. So this was the Verk ETT 01, and that's what you're all about.